Welcome to the Garden of Neuro Institute Poetry Book Club. This is Lisa Tomei Zonneveld. So happy to have everybody here today. In the Garden of Neuro, we envision a world where all women are seen and heard. Our community practices deliberative conversations, sociocratic decision-making, and collective projects for the benefit of all engaged members. We share wisdom through book clubs, kitchen table talks, free and paid courses, and collaborative work. Our simple rules are to respect all the spaces, be curious, ask questions, support women's agency, and be open to life's infinite possibilities. So welcome, everybody. This is my last time to lead the Poetry Book Club, but I'm turning it over to the capable hands of Nancy Arvizu. So congratulations, Nancy. I will gladly hand it over to you, although I have enjoyed doing this very much. I think it's been like 2 years, and I think I've brought enough people in here that you have at it now. So I'm very pleased to introduce Aruna Gurumurthy. I know Aruna pretty well because we've probably known each other for about 3 or 4 years, maybe, I'm not sure. But we met because she had a book called Puppet Dolls, and it was posted on a blog by Jean-Marie Oliveri, who was talking about it, and I'm like, well, I got to check this book out because it was about a book of sestinas, and I had never heard of a sestina in my life. And so I got the book and I could not put it down. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to have to go tell this lady how much I appreciate her book. And from then on, we just, became friends. And every once in a while, we get together and have lunch. It's been a little while, so we need to catch up on that. But Aruna Gurumurthy is a creative thinker, an author, and a poet. She has published 7 books of poetry since 2015. And her recent collection is Down the Grassy Aisles. And it's a penning of love, life, and motherhood that she's read to children and seniors. She's been doing a program lately. She's been posting about her reading to seniors. Her poems appear in the Bellevue Literary Review, Story Sal, the Penwood Review, Redheaded Stepchild Magazine, and others. And she was a runner-up for the 2022 Randall Jarrell Poetry Prize and is semifinalist of the 2022 and 2023 James Applewhite Poetry Prize. Congratulations. And Aruna lives with her loving family in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and brings change in the world one poem at a time. Welcome, Aruna. We'd like to go around the room and each introduce ourselves, and then we'll start with Annette.
Hi, I'm Annette Riddle from Wyandotte, Michigan, sometimes Georgia, and I like to visit my family. And I joined the garden in January of this year. So, and I attended every poetry workshop I could, and I just love them. And Aruna, I don't know why, but your poems are so really down my heart, in my heart. They really struck a chord for me. Thank you, Aruna.
Thank you, Annette.
Thank you. And Annette's a really good person to research who's going to be coming on. And so we've been having a little talk about your poetry while we were waiting. Tina, is your internet going to work okay for you to share? You're on mute. You're still muted. I can't hear you. Is it you're on mute? You're still muted.
There we go. Hi, Aruna. I'm really looking forward to hearing your poetry and hearing you speak. I joined the garden several years ago during COVID, and it's been a very supportive group, and everything they do seems to be incredibly supportive and nurturing. So I can't imagine you will be any different.
Thanks, Tina. Nancy?
Hi, Nancy Arvizu. I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona. And the garden is the nearest and dearest thing to my heart there could possibly be. All of the women in here have been such an just light in my life since day one. And I just want to thank you all for being here. And thank you, Aruna, for sharing your work with us. I didn't know there were short stories involved. Very cool. I like a very diverse writer, but I'm looking forward to the poetry today. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure and surprise to see you all. We see names and we see sort of, unclear pictures on the internet, and we are like, okay, this person said this. What does, where's that coming from and stuff? So I am so delighted to meet you all today. And the pictures aren't so unclear anymore because I can see your faces really well. And I'm really happy to be part of the Garden of Neuro. I have a background of working in psychology research a little bit, so the Garden of Neuro rings a bell to me. And today I'm going to be reading from two of my books. As Lisa pointed out, the first one's called Down the Grassy Aisles, and the second one is called Simplicity Beckons. This is an earlier of my books, and I just, you gotta I want to say that I've moved along in poetry and dancing and and dancing my thoughts through to the reader quite a bit since then. This was published in 2018, right? A couple years before the pandemic, and this was my pandemic baby, Down the Grassy Aisles. So why not we get started with, are you all ready for me to start reading?
Yes, go
Okay.
right ahead.
Okay, great. And I do want to mention one thing other than the Garden of Neuro, that Lisa is a delightful person to know. She is such a special person in my poetic world, and I have known her, actually, Lisa, since 2018. And when Simplicity Beckons was just out, and I had a porch book party at my place, and she came and with her friends, and it's been such a journey since then, but she's always been my go-to person if I needed help with looking at words and stuff like that. So if y'all need help, you know where to go. So I do want to start with Down the Grassy Aisles. The first poem I want to read has been inspired by my little girl. She's 10 years now, but she was, I think, 4 or 5 when I wrote this poem, and it's called The Embrace. It's on page 14 if anybody has the book. The Embrace. The growing vine, she helixes around the naked branches of the oak. She travels through a gazebo. She dances about the bounds, loosening up a passerby's grimace. With a musical glow and oomph to the soul, resplendent raw sienna, her body touches the tree. A cherub of 24 months, she has grown and crawls to embrace me. A subtle Shangri-La, a mystic Bethlehem, the dancing duos in the arms of Mother Earth.
Thank you. One of the things I want to point out, because Down the Grassy Aisles has several prose poems, and we're having a workshop tomorrow on prose poetry. Ironically, we're reading prose poems today. So
yeah, the beauty of
really.
prose poems is that they read like prose, as though you're reading a piece of nonfiction or a piece of essay or something, a story, but they have elements of poetry studded in there. They have the rhyme, the rhythm, the alliteration, and metaphors and anything you want to beautify your poem with are present in prose poems. And so that's why I decided to tell a story in each one of these poems. And that's why I chose this mode of delivery of poems. And so the next one I want to go to relates to my childhood. So from embrace my daughter's childhood to my childhood in Mumbai, I embrace the rains in this torrential rains in Mumbai. It's called the monsoon season, often from June to September, and so this is called "Those Were the Rainy Days." Summer knocks, then beckons. I remember the beats of the Bombay monsoons, downpours slapping us with life. The raindrops descend on my glossy pink raincoat covered body, then into my warm soul. Colas and popsicles wetting a mouthful, a reason for the water balloons to fill and toss at tiny shirts in an ongoing bonanza of thrill, a display of amusement, squeezing every bit of enthusiasm into a tiny umbrella, swinging arms like Maria in the sound of music, drenched and dancing to eternity. In the downpour, we devour corn from the neighbor's corn stand. He roasts the corn, rubs red cayenne and crushed peppercorns, and drizzles it with lemon drops, tasting like butter had bestowed its best on us. Our hearts trip into fields of love, tickled tongues licking the peripheral remains of the snack inside our cutesy cheeks. Aha, is this life or is this love? Those are the Bombay Wala rainy days.
That's beautiful.
Beautiful.
It is.
After I read that poem, I had to make corn that way. It is good.
It is. It's so tactile and visceral.
It's
Yes.
delicious. That corn had had a drizzle of lemon on it, and it was spicy, it was sweet, it was everything that you needed to have a perfect snack on a rainy afternoon. So it was just really good. Yeah. Lisa, do you have a favorite poem in mind that you might want me to read as we
Well,
go?
I have a question actually,
Sure.
because I know people in this group always like to know about background, how you got started. What made you decide to delve into poetry? I know you just didn't wake up one day when you were 5 and start writing. So, what's your backstory on poetry?
So, I was this was back in 2016. My journey or dive into poetry was very sudden. I mean, I've always been a lover and an admirer of nature and beauty around me, but I kind of felt like, so I was juggling jobs and I was at a position in a university, and I was going to lose my job due to funding. And then I was also writing my first book at that time. It's called Dia, a Megawatt Approach to Change, and they are a compilation of my Facebook posts. And I was doing that, and then I published my first book, But then in 2016, it was a very surprising move for me to tell me. I had a dream like at, one morning, and I was quite vivid. 2016, maybe like January or February, I woke up and the dream told me to write poetry. And then I woke up and I was like, okay, why not give that a shot? I had quit my job. I was doing the marketing for my first book. And then I said, well, what is poetry and how can I get involved with it? And I started writing. And I had this really small desk in my office room, much different than how it looks now. Now it's a lot bigger, but I had this really small desk with humble beginnings. I just took a piece of paper and started scribbling some stuff in it, and to my surprise, the stuff became my first poem. I had never written a poem in my life until then. And I said, okay, so this is my first poem. And then, Lisa, it's real life. It's a real story, true story. And then I started, and then I wish I had, or maybe I do have it somewhere downstairs, the book Spark. That's my first book. But the way that was made was I just kept writing and writing and writing. And there are about 160 pages worth of poems in there. And they all came from that morning in January in 2016. There the 160 pages of poetry. And then I decided I'm going to publish this stuff. And I had no clue whatsoever how to. Well, I kind of did my first nonfiction book the year before, but I know I'd never published poetry before. And so I kind of, it was, to answer your question, it was epiphany, it was a marriage of epiphany, it was suspense, it was drama, it was everything involved in those 160 pages of poetry that made me from a nobody to a poet.
Wonderful. I love that story. Makes my heart happy. I'm glad that you listened to that dream. I'm glad that you paid attention.
Right, right. I mean, and I'm really happy because that book then took the form of another book and another book, and every year I kept writing poetry books. And in 2020 was the last book, Down the Grassy Aisles, so far, my recent book. It's definitely been a journey. No, I had never taken a workshop or a class. I haven't even had, you know, an English degree um, in collegiate English or anything like that. I just decided to dive into poetry and make that my karma, and it's wonderful. I like it because I write about life, I write about beauty, I write about nature, about my wonderful family and my thoughts, and it's just it was really good. And the fun thing is I never wrote poetry with an intention to make money or to sell my books or anything like that. I just wrote it for fun. And because what happens, we all know in poetry, people write poems and submit them to journals and anthologies and stuff like that. And but I did, and then think of compiling poems to put into books, but I did it the reverse way. I first started writing books, and then I started sending my work to journals and stuff. And so I'm glad that one morning my stuff became a poem.
Wonderful. Thank you. Does anybody else have a question to ask? Nancy's got her hand up.
I want to hear more about the nonfiction book real quick. What was that about? What's the
So,
title of it again?
yeah, the title of it is DIYA, DIA, a megawatt approach to change.
Ah, okay.
And that is essentially a compilation of my Facebook posts that I used to write those days. I still write a lot of on Facebook, but this particular book was a production of all my Facebook posts. So it's about that dense, and yeah, I just had written so many over the course of time that I decided when I was working at that job that I needed something else to do. And I compiled all those and crunched them into a book. And people have been enjoying that book. And I had a thrill writing it, and I didn't know, I never got into the book world. I'm kind of like a self learner, so I don't like people to tell me what to do when it comes to publishing or editing or or getting the book out there, marketing. But this time I did listen to my husband, because he said the best way for you to go is through Amazon, and so I self published the book. So that's the other thing. All my poetry books and my first nonfiction book have been self-published, except for Down the Grassy Isles. Down the Grassy Isles was picked up by a publisher in Utah, and so so Dia is a book about change, and it's about how we can make small changes in our lives and how that balloons into the bigger realm of, oh, this world is a better place because I read Dia. uh, and and so that's kind of where the book went with, and I really enjoyed writing it. Again, I had a book launch in Chapel Hill, and these are all humble beginnings. Not many people used to show up to my initial book launches, and I would go there armed with my team, my husband and my daughter. My daughter was a year old when I released Dia, and Dia is actually her name.
Ah.
So and it also means light. So I decided to name the book Dia, and my team would go with me, and they would pep me up and say, it's okay, one day will come when people will be standing outside the door waiting to get into your book launches. And and it's interesting. It's been a journey. It's and I loved it, and there's no regrets about anything.
Beautiful
Are you
story. I
working
love
on a
it.
book? Are you working on a book now?
I am working on editing a book right now. So not editing alone. Some part of it is still writing, but I have been engaged in sort of the nitty gritties of the poems, and so both my books that are going to be sent to publishers are poetry books, and so that's what I'm doing right now.
Wonderful. Look forward to that. Annette has her hand up.
Hi, Annette.
Hi. I really appreciate your book, The Spark, and I forget the name and rest of that title, but it just struck such a chord in me. Did you, when you wrote the beginning of that book, did you have somebody in mind, your first book, to read it, or was it for everybody you knew, or was it speaking of your soul, or just everything you knew?
A little bit of everything, Annette. I wrote from my soul. I also wrote it for everyone. All my books are kosher, I write clean stuff, and I want a variety of people to be able to appreciate that. And it was sort of like Spark, my first, Annette's talking about my first poetry book. Spark was more or less a penning of my life and my emotions, and I did not write it for a particular audience. I wrote it for whoever wants to knock on my door, come on in and read Spark. That's why I wrote Spark.
Would you please read I Am Drinking a Cup of Courage on page 31?
31. Yeah, this is one of my favorite poems. Oh, by the way, I do want to mention that Lisa helped me edit this book, The Down the Grassy Isles. And she's done a marvelous job because she helped me. Lisa is a very calm editor. She will sort of look at it and won't jump into making changes right there. She would appreciate the value of the writer. And oftentimes she's done that with my own poems, and I appreciate that. So, Lisa. I am drinking a cup of courage. In the middle of stormy seas and monster ripples, a 12-month-old crawls the unseen ladders of fright. A 720-month-old senior is cornered by dementia. A 400-month-old dizzy, staggering mother is ready to drown. Oh God, I cry for a small cup of courage. And God says, my dear, a cup of courage is not a given, but a birthing. I wander in the wilderness, searching for that enticing cup, gently plucking herbs, shaking and stirring them into the know-it-all of my life, marrying every rhythm of reality, twisting each misty morning, touching my tummy. I feel the bubbling of something special. Courage is about to be born.
Beautiful.
Thank you. And if anyone else has a recommendation, or if you want me to pick my next poem, I'll be happy to do that.
Nina's got her hand up.
You don't have to pick. I just wanted to make a comment. In your Buddha in the Brain book, I had a laugh because I love the poem where you do a wonderful soliloquy on the mower, the guy mowing, and you make it so existential. Because yesterday I was outside raking leaves with a rake, and there were 3 hired gardeners with leaf blowers going at the same time, and I thought I was going to lose my mind. And when I came in this morning, I thought about that poem, and I thought, if I had just looked at that experience differently, it could have been a poetic experience instead of a really aggravating. So I just wanted to comment on how you take the everyday average experience of life and make it into something really profoundly thoughtful.
Thank you. And that's the way my brain works, and it sort of takes a spin on something very, very inconsequential, if you will. A cup of tea, or the paisley on my pillow, or the drooping leaves, or something like that, and I end up making a big deal out of it. Something that was not so celebratory, I take that and I tell a story about it.
Well,
And
you do it beautifully.
thank you. Thank you. It's very good to get feedback like that, because I am, I just write, and I'm not part of any writing group
Mhm,
or anything, and nobody gives me uh, a hearsay on my poems. And I'm doing all day, every day, is sitting on my recliner, my favorite recliner, and writing or editing or thinking. And it's very helpful to get feedback from people who have in reality read my poems. And it's interesting. I feel loved.
The other thing I wanted to ask you, Aruna, which I always find really fascinating, I don't know what your first language is. Was
Uh-huh.
it English?
No, my English is my second language, or
Okay.
I should rather say even third language, because I speak at home, we speak Tamil,
Mhm.
and I also know Hindi.
Well,
So
because I think it's amazing how you then, I mean, even more amazing to me, how you write so eloquently in English.
I do, and that's why I say that, there's got to be an element of divinity going on here,
Hmm.
because I was always good at English in school.
Hmm.
Throughout my years of schooling, I was good at English. I was good at speaking English. I was good at writing in English. I
Hmm.
won like creative writing competitions and
Hmm.
essays and stuff like that. Did well, to be
Hmm.
honest. And I s- but I'd never but we never spoke in English at home. We always spoke in our native language,
Hmm.
Tamil. And so I don't know. I mean, I didn't make an effort to become a
Hmm.
poet. That's what I'm trying to say, is it all came to me, but I did put in a lot of hard work and an effort into writing poems and understanding my style of poems. And so it's it's been a wonderful journey.
Do you ever write in Hindi or Tamil?
No, in
Okay.
fact, I don't know. I know the script of Hindi because
Hmm.
we were taught that in school.
Hmm.
But my grandmother, when we used to go for summer vacations to Chennai,
Hmm.
um, taught me the script of um, Tamil. and
Hmm.
um, and just the script, meaning just A to Z in
Hmm.
Tamil, basically. So ooh
Hmm.
ooh, and that kind of stuff. How would you write that in Tamil? And to boast about myself, I have a pretty good handwriting in Tamil.
Hmm.
So when my husband and I were friends in Michigan, um, he was like, "Oh, can you write Tamil?" And because I sounded like the cool English speaking person, and so he's like, "Can you write Tamil?" And I wrote every single name he asked me to write, like his sister's name or a friend's name, and the sounds would help me write with rhythm. And that's the way I mean, but I've never written a story, or I'm not that fluent to write in
I'm wondering if that background in hearing the musicality of the two different languages
uh-huh.
just automatically contributes to how your poetry flows unconsciously. You know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
English is such a harsh language,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So anyway, I
Yeah.
find that very interesting.
you're not the first person who's saying that to me. I ran a poem by one of my friends, Sandra, a couple weeks ago, and she looked at it and she said, "There's so much rhythm in your poetry. I wonder if it has to do with the fact that you speak in a different language." And it's like when you listen to Italians, for instance, they have that na, 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 that kind of yeah. So that's what I learned. And again, this group is rocking. I love the fact that people are actually reading my poetry and I'm liking it. I'm very thankful for that.
Thank you.
It's in your sestinas that you can really also see that dance, and those are hard to write. But,
Oh my God, the Sestina journey, yes. And actually, one of my upcoming books is going to be a full-length publication of Sestinas. I know I'm not supposed to say certain things just because that this is going to go to the internet, and I don't want to make a big deal out of it, but that it is what it is, and so yeah. So yeah, I time maybe for another poem.
sure.
Tradition. Mums, the bushy yellow burst spoke, longing for life and belongings. Soaked in tradition, a tender bud, birthing, flickering with hope in the flawless scintilla of sunshine, then withering to its muddy nothings. A florist's excuse to trip and fall in nature's arms, a devotee's offering to Shiva, a speck of enthusiasm in a bowl, the terracotta niche, the chrysanthemums, a reason to twist a passerby's glance, tell a blossoming story, muse the divine. Something I wanted to, I'm trying to think what it was. Something I wanted to say about my journey writing in English is that I didn't, I kind of even participated in debates at some stage and would write my debates. And my dad at that time would say, "Aruna, can I edit your debate?" So I'm very resistant to negative criticism about my work. If somebody says, "Oh, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do that," I mean, there's a limit to which I can take it. I mean, I like people telling me that your work is good, and there's nothing wrong in that. As writers, you all know that the way to develop somebody's skill comes from placating them first, right? Telling them that, "Oh, you did a marvelous job." It makes their day, right? Why not? I love that. And I love I don't know, it just sings in my ears when somebody says your poetry is good. So in my English journey, I've always been encouraged by other people. That's what I'm trying to say is the time that my class teacher brought out my final English essay and read it to the class. I was thrilled. She said, "This is the best essay from this group, and I'm going to read it to you." So an essay is an essay, a long piece of information. And she read it, and it was, I felt good. You feel like a child when somebody says you did a good job. So I mean, that kind of brings me to a caveat where I feel like, um, it's editing is a good thing because and there's so many rules to editing these days.
Yeah.
Get dot the I, dash the T, you can't use preposition, you can't do that. There's so many restrictions to editing. I mean, let the language flow, let the love flow. And that makes a good editor is, and if you don't see logic in somebody's writing, then say it in a good way. Why do
Mhm.
editors have to be so harsh on writers sometimes? And I'm just talking about the general um, um, picture that I see. And
Mhm.
the reason my English, so to speak, flourished is because I was encouraged as a
Mhm.
student, as even, most all of my editors have been nice to me, but there are these rules of editing that come from nowhere sometimes. And we need to pay attention as lovers of literature to not let that rule our lives.
Can I say something? I agree with you on that. Sometimes I've written a piece and I know that I should not end on a preposition
Mhm.
intellectually. But when I switch it around and make it correct, it doesn't sound right. It doesn't carry
Mhm.
right. And so then I switch it back.
Mhm.
I think forget it. I'm ending on a preposition. And I think that's a sign of a good editor that can distinguish uh between what is grammatically correct and what the writer is trying to say and what sounds correct, because poetry is meant to be spoken.
Mhm.
It's not it's not it is meant to be heard, and if it doesn't sound right, to me it
Mhm.
isn't right.
I agree with that. Yes, that's true. But I mean, I am a spontaneous writer and
Hmm.
a spontaneous speaker. So whatever I say here, I know is being recorded, but I kind of embrace the fact that, you know, and the fact that I have been encouraged. And it feels good is the point, is that don't shush a writer, let them bloom, let them get it out of their system,
Hmm.
if you will.
It's like a dance. Sometimes you just have to let it flow the way it will. And
Hmm.
if you feel like you got to change something too much, you just feel out of step.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
because
plus it gets a little awkward to tell somebody, you know that this is not right, that is not right, change this, change that. It gets a little awkward. And i I admire people who can accept um, writers for the value that they are.
You have to honor the poet's voice.
you
Right.
know
True voice.
that's even true when I was teaching middle school. When the students wrote, and I taught library, so we did essays, but I was the librarian. It wasn't like I was the English teacher. But I would always say to them, they're very tentative. They were all boys, and they were very tentative about writing. A lot of them, the majority of them, were not writers, and so they would write something, and they would say, "I can't do it." I said, "Just whatever's in your head, put it down. Just put it down." And then we would go over it, and I would say, "Well, this is good." I said, "But tell me what you mean by this." And I'll say, "Okay, now write that." And it is a process. It's a dialogue between the writer and the teacher or the editor, in that you don't want them to lose their authentic voice
Yeah.
because of rules.
True.
You know,
Yeah.
thank you
And
for saying that. That's actually very affirming.
yes, and it's helped me in my own journey, and that's why
Mhm.
I tend to take, this is Garden of Neuro, so I tend to take the path in which my eyes and mind drive me to think about things in writing and in life. And so it's these are observations I make about real life, and
Mhm.
I transfer them to paper when I um, write my poems.
Sometimes Runa and I would say, when you'd be working on a poem, sometimes we just say, I need to hear you read it to me. Then I can hear the voice
Mhm.
that's in that poem. It makes all the difference in the world to hear it versus see it on paper.
Yeah.
Well, Aruna, I think we have time for one more poem if you'd like to share, and then maybe we can wrap it up.
Mhm. This is Musings on page 32. Musings. One December we meet eye to eye at the coffee shop at the crooked corner where land meets water. His order is tall misto. I had never heard of that drink before. Between sips of coffee and dips of tea, words crisscross, drawing tiny red hearts in my mind's dialogue box. Hours pass like tumbling boulders, picking up my handbag and straightening the crease of my skirt. I say, thank you for the coffee. We hike the mountains of Mackinac Island, sniffing the scent of always and forever, you and me in the air. At the scenic overlooks, we gaze down at the dipping unknown. Shortly after, we quiet the embers of the fireplace in the cabin. With dust coated ping pong balls, we play bygone battles like the tick tock of a pendulum clock with rhythmic rattles. We win, we lose, then suddenly in the air, with a fierce backhand, he smashes and says, I lost on purpose. I did not want to make you feel bad. Little did I know that he lost in the game of ping pong to win in the name of love. And with that love poem, I end my reading. And Lisa, I give it to you and to take it from here.
Thank you, Aruna. This has been really enjoyable. Of course, I've heard your readings many times, but I thought this was super special, extra special. So I'll be really happy then we can share this out into the world. Do want to remind people tomorrow we do have a poetry workshop. It's from 10 to 11 and well 10 to 10:50. I dearly have to be out of the room. But anyway, so come be prepared to write your little tails off because we're going to work. So thank you all so much.
I have
Yes.
a question, Lisa.
Uh-huh.
Would it be possible to send this recording, the link, to my email address?
Yeah.
Would that be possible? Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for coming out today. Look forward to the next poetry book club. And I think, Nancy, you were going to maybe change the time just a little bit. And do you know who you're going to have for January?
So I'm still a little up in the air at the moment, but I will be announcing it in the garden soon. We will get the calendar together and the guest list together. So yes.
Super. All right. Well, thank you all so much. Welcome to the garden, Aruna. And y'all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.